This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Laddick, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in EdTech, spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver effective, customized, and engaging learning experiences for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the eLearn podcast. I hope that you are all doing well on today, Tuesday, August 29th. I just had to put that little timestamp in there. I am here with a person who, it's really difficult to get on a podcast because she's super, super busy and important. Ms. Lisa Avery. How are you today, Lisa?
I'm doing pretty great. How about you?
I'm fantastic. My guess is that, you tell me right now, did you just run into your office for this particular conversation? Then you've probably got something already planned at 11:30 and 11:45 or something like that.
No, I didn't run. I sprinted. I'm double, triple booked, but it's good. It's the price of success, right? It means that we're trying to keep a lot of plates spinning, and dropping as few as possible. So it's all good. Got plenty of time, and happy to chat today about some of my favorite topics.
Yeah. When I first met you, I guess it was just earlier this year, which it seems like forever ago already,
Right.
But it was February this year. You and I were sitting at the Connected conference in Phoenix together. And you just said to me, I really would love to have a deeper conversation around digital equity, around what, all of these changes that we've seen over the last 3-4 years. And now I'm sure with AI even more, and how it's affecting the community college space.
Yep.
In particular. And so before we dive into that conversation, I need to put your pedigree on the stage here a little bit. Tell us about who you are. Tell us about Linn-Benton. Give us the 1 minute on, what you deliver and what your college represents.
Okay, happy to do that. So, I'm the president at Linn-Benton Community College, and we are located in Western Oregon, about an hour south of Portland, about 45 minutes north of Eugene, for those who are familiar with the I-5 corridor. Those times, of course, are traffic dependent, can be 3 hours in either direction, but so far so good today anyway. And at Linn-Benton, we are a comprehensive community college. We have essentially a few different buckets. I'm trying to keep this under a minute. So we do
Take
lots
your time.
of credit.
You tell us all about all of them. We love it.
We do lots and lots of credit learning. We're especially well known, I think, for some of our stuff in the manufacturing, advanced manufacturing sectors, strong health programs, and a super sweet transfer program with our colleagues at Oregon State. And a lot of that involves e-learning. And then a bunch of community outreach and engagement and trying to work, and maybe we'll get time to talk about this in terms of the future of learning, but trying to make sure that we're engaging adults around credentials and non-credit stuff. So that's what we do at LB, and our sweet spot really is providing education for all and helping, we believe that, community colleges take the top 100% of students
Yeah.
And we have something for all of them from womb to tomb. So that's what we do here.
We take the top 100% of students. I love that. So what is I mean, I'm not from the Portland area. I'm not from the Oregon area. So what does a typical student look like? Is it a commuter student? Is it an adult learner? Are these people, is it someone who's coming out of like a high school situation and wants to, get some credits before they go? And is it all the above?
Yeah, I'd say it's all of the above. I mean, our average age of our students is probably now about 26. So we do typically see then an older, if you can think of 26 as old, an older student than a 4-year might see and capture. But we do a lot of dual enrollment, so high school credit, students coming right out of high school, and many students who are just making a stop here for a year or two on the way to a 4-year degree with one of our partners. And two, again, talking about re-engaging adult learners, we might see somebody come back and upskill and do a couple of classes between degrees, or get a new credential or certificate to try to get a better salary in the workplace. So
Cool.
there is no such thing as a typical day or a typical student here, which for me is work in the space.
Excellent. I was actually, before the interview, I was perusing your section on the LB website, and I'm guessing it's probably a common footer that you have there, but it features a particular individual whose name I'm forgetting, but it was a guy who worked at a mill, and he said, "Look, I wanted to change my career. Now he's a nurse," and I just thought that was a great to see, and I think you call them real stories of people who come in and they're like, "Look, I want to pivot, I want to make a life change, or I want to level up my game somehow." I can even say, even though I am super dated, like I am, I've got so much gray hair here. I went to Aurora Community College, where I grew up in Colorado. And that was a way for me to get ahead on the college, the 4-year game, to get some credits before I went there, so that the 4-year game would be shortened. Tell me about where in 2023, as we're starting a new school year, as you and I are recording this, in your mind, where do community colleges sit? Where is their sweet spot, their importance? Like I know that they play a big, huge role, but help everyone understand the profundity of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been a bit of a tumultuous time for our sector as we continue to bounce back from the pandemic. So community colleges educate about almost, I think, half of Americans who end up with a bachelor's degree. Half of them started at a community college, like you. I assume you did eventually finish that bachelor's degree somewhere in Colorado.
I got three of them now. So I got 3.
Yeah. And so you are among millions who have started a community college and then finished their degree. But we saw during COVID, a lot of students choosing to stop out and drop out. And we've been struggling as a sector to re-engage that group of students. And so lots of different phenomena. Hopefully we can dive into this sort of great education recession and what happened during the pandemic that led to it. But in the meantime, we think of ourselves as the rapid responders for workforce. And so community colleges are quick to be able to, and more nimble probably than our 4-year partners, at being able to stand up a new program, being able to get somebody trained from being a millwright to being a nurse, and then also to do things that are a little bit more creative around short-term certificates and credentials. And so that's where we sit. But really, womb to tomb education from early childhood all the way through has something for everyone. Where we're trying to go, I think, is to make sure that we're responding to all the technology and offering students, both as students, but then as employees, a fluency around the digital skills that they need to succeed in the workplace today.
Before I ask you that next question around digital equity and those pieces, because I think it's just so top of mind for everyone. Why can a place like LB pivot faster than a 4-year place? Or why do you have the nimbleness with your staff, with your faculty, etc., and that isn't available at like Portland State? You know what I mean? Why can't they move as fast as you?
Well, it's interesting. I started at a 4-year. I have some degrees from 4 years as well. So I've been a student and then an instructor at a 4-year. And I think that the way the curriculum is designed in our 4-year institutions just makes it, because the degrees have a lot of advanced 3rd and 4th year courses, or graduate. Many of the 4 years now are seeing graduate as a growth market for them. And so those are sort of more lockstep. And we're able to do things that can flip a little bit of that more quickly. And of course, we want students who both learn the skills, like whether it's, we have machining and welding, like we have nursing. We want them to learn those skills, but also civil discourse, civic engagement, all of the being a well-rounded learner. But we can do it in a way that doesn't require 4 to 6 years. And we can get, our faculty tend to be smaller. They teach, they don't do research as part of their appointment. And so we hire and evaluate our faculty in the community colleges just based on teaching. And no knock on the 4 years. I mean, I was a full professor at a 4-year, but much more of my evaluation as a professor was based on my scholarship and my grant funding than it was on the teaching, right?
Sure,
and so
yeah.
we focus on teaching, and I think that helps us then to really focus on learners and what they need, and we can quickly adapt to changing circumstances. Now, we have bureaucracy. We're not as quick as we should be, but I think that this sector is one that is more able to do those quick pivots.
So it sounds to me like, so I guess I want to go backwards forwards, the great education recession thing, because what you've just put on the table there, it sounds to me like the community college system, LB in particular, but I'm going to assume that your counterparts in other parts of the United States have similar qualities. Why? It sounds to me like this would be an absolute, no-brainer for somebody who wants to upskill, as an adult learner, or who, needs those a few extra credits to, either complete a degree or, get into that associate's degree or get something started. So why and how were community colleges hit so dramatically in the great, in the pandemic, and have had sort of a slower recovery?
Yeah, there's probably a few threads to pull apart of that. So come back to me if we don't get them all. I think one, we tend to serve more vulnerable students, more students who are first time to college, and might not have the confidence that they would have if they had been at a 4-year, or if they had felt like they had more academic preparation. We get lots of really bright students, but you can be really bright and also concerned about your skills at the same time. So there's that whole bucket of students who felt like, maybe I'm not set up to succeed in the online education world. And so as we moved, and we're a super happy open LMS client at LB, we've done great online work for many years, but it hasn't been at the scale that it was during COVID. And all of us, really the whole country, but especially in education, overnight had to quickly be able to then deliver almost 100% of their content remotely. And so many of our students just weren't ready for that rapid change. I think a second.
So before you go to point number 2, was there, so you started by saying, they come from a different set of the universe, maybe a little more vulnerable. So were they not ready because they didn't have devices, because they didn't have connectivity? Was it just a general, and this kind of bleeds into our other topic, less savvy digitally in terms of how, getting access, what's available, those kinds of things? Or was there another equation there about why they weren't necessarily ready to sort of say, hey, yeah, I can jump into this new platform?
I think it's a couple pieces. I mean, certainly we do see students who are lower income, less likely to have a fancy digital setup at home than students who are higher income. And we certainly serve affluent students as well. But again, when many students, it's their first point of entry into college, they were working on their phone rather than on a laptop or a tablet or some other, fancier device. And even just because we serve a lot of rural students, and so the broadband hasn't been here in many of our rural, especially low income communities. And so that's been a factor as well. And I think secondly, if I can pivot it a little bit, I think pivot's like our word for the day. I had an ACL injury this spring though, so I promised my doctor no more pivoting. So I'm just going to stay in my chair and stay still. No, the pivots are only language wise today, but many of for our programs and our students, they just weren't really faced with the skills that they needed to make that change in the classroom. And poverty underpins all of that, I think. And so as we sort of consider what do we need to do to make sure that they're ready, The college has done a lot. We provided laptops. We opened our parking lots for Wi-Fi space. We're getting there in terms of broadband access, but we know that we have a lot that we still need to do to help students succeed in the online and remote climate.
Do you remember that point number 2 that you were about to jump to there?
No,
As we were
we
talking about,
lost it completely. I talked about my shattered ACL and lost it altogether. Well, just again, really thinking about poverty. I mean, that's one of the backdrops that we think about, and the wages. So yes, you got me there, which is that a lot of our students had family members that they needed to care for. And they were working, at home, and we have a lot of single parents. Probably 70% of our students have kids that they're helping raise or that they're raising on their own. And so then when the pandemic happened, and all of a sudden we had kids at home doing school with us, I had that at my household too. Those moms and dads chose to focus on the kids' educational success, maybe to the expense of their own, and put their own studies on hold to help their kids get through school. Or sometimes maybe they only had one device that they could use as a family, so they chose to engage the kids in school. So we've seen then, and we don't have there was a massive childcare crisis as well, especially among our lowest income families. So putting all that together, you've got the challenges around sort of confidence in digital literacy, broadband restrictions, and then finally, the single parent sort of caregiver phenomenon. I guess it's not a surprise that you see this enrollment drop at the community colleges.
So take me to solutions that Linn-Benton and yourself and others in your position have been implementing and are looking forward in over the next 4 or 5 years here. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but something in the back of my mind says there was something floated around, at least in the US, around making community colleges free. I think that was a thing. I'm not sure if it ever where it is or where it went. But I know that there was a huge enrollment, like, sort of fall off after, during and after the pandemic. And so tell me, how are you closing that gap? And like, what do you see as you're continuing to move forward? Cause you just said getting on here, you're like, wow, we keep a lot of plates spinning. It's really busy and things are, it's super you kind of came on really positive. So tell me about that.
Well, we're trending better. I don't want to jinx anything for fall. And we're here
knocking wood immediately right now.
Yeah, exactly. We're on a quarter system in the Northwest still. So LBCC doesn't start classes for a few more weeks, whereas many of our friends are a couple weeks into their fall semester already. But we're up. Our numbers are higher for fall. And some of that is we've made some significant investments in our digital infrastructure and and it's really a challenge because we're trying to meet students where they're at or where we think that they should be. And we, during COVID, especially at the beginning, there were all these surveys, like survey after survey after survey of students, asking them, what do you want in terms of your classes and your class schedule and the array of offerings as we began to come back between fully online, hybrid, or fully in person. And so students continue to tell us, I want in person. I want solely in person. I want 100% in person. But then you know what they register for? A lot of online or hybrid. So
100%. That's of course.
So they really want the flexibility. And we've, I think, finally found a sweet spot in terms of what that flexibility looks like. They need some interaction with each other. They need a connection to faculty because we think that the relationship between student and faculty is really central in helping students succeed and get the content and have all of the relational sort of the good stuff that they need around mentoring and career support. But at the same time, if they've got a childcare crisis or a sick kid or whatever the case may be, a transportation challenge, they need to be able to pop online, grab that content, and stay making progress and keep their forward momentum going toward learning. So we've pushed forward a lot of either hybrid or high flex content. We think finally we're seeing students, what we're offering and what students are wanting matching up better in terms of our course, the array of course alignment. And that's it's hard to guess because academic scheduling has usually been done year over year. You just take out that old spreadsheet, you do a save as, you update the spreadsheet, and then you know.
You have just outed like every university ever. Oh my
There's
Lord.
you don't need to find a fancy a software vendor for that. That's really just how it's been done. COVID shattered it. Finally, we can bust it
Nice.
up, that spreadsheet. So now we've had to rebuild things and figure out not, what have we always done, but what do students need us to do? And to help students too, to figure out that there is, I think, a strong return on investment for some of their time being done in person on campus. But when and where? Just
Right.
like when we think about the business world, like it's great to do some remote time, but what is the best use of the in-person together time? We've had to build that out too in higher ed.
There's kind of two things that I'm noodling on right now as you're talking. Is the first is, how much does this maybe engender or find like a concierge kind of service within LB? You know what I mean? Where it's like, you usually have like an academic advisor, or you have somebody who but taking that to another level where they can even really shepherd somebody through a process without babysitting, obviously, right? Like there's a certain threshold where it's like, look, you got to do the work, and you got to actually show up. But for a lot of these situations where, okay, look, mom and dad aren't paying for college, and I'm not going to a traditional 4-year kind of thing. Is that possible, or, in your system, or is that a thought?
We're not really funded or set up for that very much, but what we've tried to put into place is student navigators. So somebody who would help a student or a prospective student figure out where do they want to go and how can we help them get there. And our goal has been in that there's no wrong turns and no dead ends. So that whatever it is, we find something for the student that helps them keep pushing forward. And I'm really immensely concerned about wages being part of that, and making sure that students are getting into fields and programs that are going to have strong family wages for them. Housing has gotten very expensive. I think all across the country, housing is an issue. And the pandemic kind of brought that to light as well, and really changed the way people work and where they work. And then as a consequence, especially here on the West Coast, change what housing prices look like. So for our students, we're just trying to focus on those wage premiums being sustained as well. So that's one of the things our navigators are thinking about is, no offense to a 6-year degree in poetry, but how about 15 weeks of phlebotomy?
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And let's think, and then maybe you can pursue your poetry dreams for your next degree.
Well, and that's take me down that path as well, because I feel like so often we look at degree opportunities, education opportunities as these terminal moments where it's like, hey, okay, so you said phlebotomy, and so, okay, so I'm stuck there. I get that sense of, hey, I've chosen this, and so that's my end game. How much do those navigators, are they able to continue that conversation and say, hey, look, here's a next step? Right. And then, you could go to this next step, and really it's about, that lifelong learning, that lifelong, expansion of myself. Does that continue to happen?
Yeah, that resonates with me, because I think we hear from a lot of people, including our employers, that now our careers our job training and education is much more iterative than it once was, right? You don't just do, this lockstep degree and then get through it and start a job and stay in that job till the end of your career. It's much more fluid. And so I think that's something we need to make sure that we're focusing on. And two, reminding the public of the benefits of education. That's something that we spend a lot of time on out in the community, because I think we've taken some public relations hits, the student loan crisis, and you mentioned earlier free community college, and I want to pick up on some of those threads. We have to make sure that the degree really has a strong value. And to me, again, that has not just social, but economic implications. It's something that we've got our folks really, I think, fine-tuning in our student onboarding process. And then making sure, too, that students find a good fit between what they think they want to study, what they're studying, and what the work world is ready for.
So the second question that was up there, after, in concert with the concierge services, how different does a school day, a day of education look like in LB as opposed to like a traditional 4-year university, where classes would probably be, morning through afternoon, and then you have some graduate classes in the afternoon, kind of evening, et cetera. Do you cater to that kind of, I have to work during the day and then I've got, the lights are kept on throughout the evening, kind of that type of thing? Or does it look different at all like that? Am I just making that up?
Some of it's a little bit wishful thinking, but some of it's true. I think we use our remote education to be the lights on in the evening and the weekend. And I think how it looks different at LB versus a traditional 4-year is that we're much more likely to have hands-on learning. And that's why we really saw a need to shift during COVID. Like, we had welding instructors who had to learn how to put their lectures online when they've been really hands-on folks all along. We've now been able to have some of that flipped classroom and some continuity so that students can have that content available online, but yet come to school and get their hands dirty, whether it's in welding or phlebotomy or whatnot. So I think in the 2-year sector, you're much more likely to see hands-on and applied kinds of learning that are connected to industry. And we think that helps because it's more closely fit with what students are going to do when they finish. So we have a lot of internship, apprenticeship, clinical education. But that makes sense, right? Because I don't want to go to a dentist who hasn't had her or his hands in somebody else's mouth before mine, right? And that's really the same with welding. And we have here non-destructive testing for some of the heavy metals in the metals industry here. I want to fly on an airplane that's been really, really well tested, as you do too. So our students get to practice that. And it's certainly there's some theory behind it, but at the same time, it's much more, again, rolling up their sleeves and getting to work. And I think our faculty really, they come to teach for us and with our students because they like that. And they really like imparting those skills to students. So that's what I think is exciting and dynamic. No, it's daunting because sometimes it's hard to get faculty who will essentially sometimes take the pay cut to come and work for us instead of being in industry. But once they're here and they're like, seeing those light bulbs come on for students, I think they really find it to be magical.
So you say some people leave careers to come, or they may make their own career shift to come, teach and impart their skills. Take me to that path of, it sounds like you should or do have strong ties to local employers or even national employers and those career paths. Like, it makes sense that those conversations would not only happen, but that there would be a great incentive, especially for sectors and businesses that need employees, that they would come and have a handshake with you that says, look, here are the types of skills we need. Can we build a program around that? Does that happen?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And then they help us too. Sometimes the equipment is phenomenally expensive. Like sometimes there are so many zeros on the forms that I'm
signing. Take a deep breath.
I'm like, wow, is this a mistake? But it's a good investment. And many times our industry partners will help us with some of that sponsorship. And other times too, they'll talk about continuing in corporate ed. Like, what do we need? Can we bring people in on the weekend and work on some of your equipment and let us figure out, we have, for instance, a program in mechatronics, which I didn't even know what that was, but it's like,
what the heck is mechatronics?
It's kind of cool because it's how to keep assembly lines running. And when that assembly line is down, it's super expensive for the company, and everybody stops. They've got all these workers just standing still, which is terrible for productivity. And so our folks learn from faculty how to diagnose and repair these high-tech assembly lines. And we have a couple of local companies who then do that. They come and use that equipment on evenings and weekends to train and upskill their workers to make sure that they're current as well. And I think that's a good example of sort of town and gown, right? The colleges and local industry connecting. And they tell us what's working and what's not, how many more graduates they might need. And we work with them, with the employers too, on making sure that, are the wages what we want them to be? And they serve on our advisory boards and let us know what the curriculum should and could look like. So yeah, we work, I think, really, really closely together. And that's then when we have new businesses that are considering coming to town, I always go out and meet them and say, here's why you should come here, because we can quickly be your talent acquisition strategy, which is exciting.
So as an institution that can pivot, I love where this is gone, because thread the needle for me in that I could totally see an industry partner coming to me like, okay, look, we need mechatronics. I need these 3 classes. I don't need any fluff. You know, we need to get them in and out because we need this. But there is the case as well to say, hey, look, let's also round that out with some digital literacy. Let's round that out. Let's round that out with some communication skills.
Yes.
Let's talk about, health and body, so that they, so we, like, do you get to make that case as well to say, look, let's put some, I don't want to call it padding because that's not what it is. Let's make it a more robust offering for either the partner or anyone coming in, because the whole person is the one that's going to be most successful.
Yes. And I love that you just used mechatronics in a sentence. So
you teed me up. I didn't even know what it was until 2.5 minutes ago.
See,
so
it's your takeaway for today. Yeah. I think it's interesting because when we talk about wages, it's not just money, right? But people who earn more money are healthier. They're happier. They're more likely to be involved in our civic they're more likely to vote, be part of democracy, have a library card, have a passport. Like, you and I share a passion, I think, for global education and world travel. And I believe that should be afforded to every student. And so we get to work with our industry partners to say, yeah, if you're worried about soft skills, and I get really tired of students getting beat up for soft skills, these essential skills that you need for the workplace. If you're worried about retention and turnover in your employees, then let's build in some of that other stuff, critical thinking, communication, and a bit more digital literacy and really world literacy into the content. And so I think the pandemic and then the labor shortage have helped employers be more open to that than they once were. It's not just work this assembly line, right? Or do these x-rays or do these blood draws, but be a part of a highly functioning, good communicating workplace. So we're getting there, but I think that actually there's a long way that we could go in that to help students really be able to succeed more in these lifelong learning entities.
We're gonna pivot one more time here.
We can do it
because now what I'm interested to know is, as someone in the community college space, how has the advent of these, generative AI products, someone like anybody coming to you from industry right now saying, hey, look, those needs that we said we had 18 months ago, we're replacing them now with bots, those kinds of things. Like, talk me through like what you've been thinking through over the summer before this school year, how your institution is responding, what you've seen, how's it impacted you, all of that stuff.
That's almost a whole separate show, but let's dive in. Well, it's interesting. AI is the topic of our fall in service. We have some really cool speakers coming to talk about it, but this is something that's been coming. Right. Yeah. It's been on the horizon.
Well, but I love that you said that though. But then why is it that every time I talk to somebody else in education, they're like, it's like a deer in headlights.
We shouldn't be shocked by this. I think what we're now seeing people focus on more, at least in the education space, is, oh my gosh, how do we know that this paper was really written by a student, right, and not by some sort of, chatbot? But, come on, this has been happening. It's been coming. COVID has probably made some of it happen more quickly, but AI has been a backdrop of a lot of our work for a while now. So how are we responding and figuring that out? Our industry partners are saying, we need folks to work more quickly and more rapidly on some of the equipment that we're going to be acquiring, and we'll get there. We'll do some of that training, but I think that focusing on making sure that we have academic integrity right now has been one way that we've seen a response demanded for by faculty. Faculty want to be able to verify that a student has written their paper, but this is not, again, that's not new, right? That's not new. We just are now seeing the software really eclipse our ability to prepare to train for it. So we've got our work cut out for us, but it shouldn't be a surprise.
Sure. So, okay. So take me to the next layer, just sort of, a couple more questions for you here. Um, it's beyond academic integrity, right? Which
Yeah.
is I kind of feel like it's a softball. That's an easy
Yeah.
question for any professor, for and anyone in education to be, okay, like, how do I do this? But what about, how that's going to change the workplace in general, or how that's going to change, the future of what work might look like? And more importantly, I just, nobody seems to want to talk about, what are we doing with all this time that we're getting back? Like, what are the students doing with the time there? Like, okay, so if I can now generate a response to, a written assignment in a quarter of the time, or even if it's half the time, what am I doing with that other half, that other portion of time that I'm getting? And then teachers as well, if I can generate a lesson plan or put together my curriculum for the semester, in literally minutes now, what am I doing with that time? Do you ever get to have those conversations?
One of the things that I've been thinking about is this opens up for us. It's always an opportunity, right? It gives us a chance to then figure out, okay, what is the nexus of that connection and relationship? Because I believe education to be highly relational, even if it's facilitated through remote and hybrid education. It's still highly relational, and it's about how we connect to each other. So chat GPT and AI are, to me, alternate modes of connection and communication, but still there are humans behind it. So when we ponder how that fits in the workplace, one of the things to me is there's going to need to be somebody who programs and repairs and is the technician on all of this equipment. And we in the 2-year space are probably pretty well positioned, as we talked about earlier, to be rapid responders with that. So we might see then a chance to do the repair and the technology behind it. There's a lot of coding there. There's a whole lot of that's way beyond my ability to comprehend what the technology is. But you need humans in the end to do a lot of that work. So that's one of the things that I think would be kind of exciting to talk about with faculty this fall. And yeah, I agree. Moving beyond the academic integrity stuff, if you have a good, strong connection to your students, you're less worried because you are probably more able to grade their work and have a sense that it's legitimately turned in, right, by a student who was an author of the content. But I think all of that just continues to bring it back to the need for us to have relationships both with industry and with faculty and students. And I think you can get that well here because we have pretty small class or instructor to student ratios. It's going to be fascinating to see how this evolves when you've got a class of 300 or 400 students. How did they in the past verify that it was really, legitimate work, and how will they now? But fortunately, we don't have any classes that are over like 30, 35 people. So that's out of my wheelhouse in terms of the many things I'm losing sleep over. That's not among them.
Well, then I'm going to give you one last question because, we teed this conversation up with, digital equity as a key issue and the great education recession. Talk to me about, you're about to enter the 23-24 school year at LB. What does this next year look like in terms of closing those gaps, in terms of, you said you're on an upward trend, as well as, things are looking bright, but like, what does that next year, maybe 2 years, look like in terms of bringing more digital equity into this conversation, or providing more, getting more support from sponsors, from partners, those kinds of things? Make the case for us.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that we don't talk enough about in education is social mobility, right? Is this notion that students need, particularly in the community college space where we educate a vast majority of the U.S., in the U.S., of underserved, low income learners, right? And getting those folks on a path that's going to help bring down social costs like incarceration, homelessness, drug use, et cetera. So using education as a prevention tool and helping to, I think we saw so much during COVID isolation, and we saw how fragile the safety net is for many of the families in our country, and especially in our rural areas. So when we put all of those kind of things together and blend them up for what is our answer for as we embark on this school year, one of the things that LB is working on is shortening the time to degree, and even just really blowing up some of the silos that higher ed we're kind of famous for, I guess, acronyms and silos and ways that we create these silos to make sense of the world. And so no offense to that, but I think we need to bust up those silos between credit and non-credit, between workforce and transfer, right? Because really everybody who comes to us, especially in the 2-year sector, they're here because they want to get a job. So it's all career education, whether you're going to go to grad school like I did, or whether you're going to stop with a 2-year degree or even like a 15-week certificate. That's all workforce. So we need to stop trying to funnel students and track students into workforce versus transfer. It's all about workforce and social mobility and about propelling people to a better life because they have higher earnings. And so I believe in our country, there's lots and lots of talent. Talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And so in the community college world, we are a great place to bring talent and opportunity together. So our challenge, I don't know what it's going to look like, is to break those silos down and hope that our funders and our accreditors and everybody who helps to make sure that we are doing the right thing for the right students in terms of our kind of quality management and quality assurance, that they can live with it, right? That we break up the silos and focus more on the skills that students need for the workforce of today and less bureaucracy and silos. So wish us luck, because we got our work cut out for us, but I think it's exciting stuff.
This is absolutely fantastic. I could talk to you for the next 2 hours about this, but I know that I'm gonna give you back, 20 minutes so that you can catch up and you don't have to sprint to your next meeting. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your pre-school year, hustle bustle to talk to us about not only what's happening, but what's important and that vision for the future. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Very much enjoyed it. Have a good
great
rest
day.
of your day. Bye-bye.